Hi, Peter Boolkah here, and welcome to today's edition of The Transition Guy. Now, joining me today in the studio is Graham Whiley, who is a mental fitness coach at the Executive Mindset. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Peter. Hello, everybody else. Great to see you.
Now, question for you, because I've heard a couple of people talk about, well, actually, if you look at it over the last 18 months, we've had a lot of people talk about mental fitness and mental health, and actually how people have suffered due to being within lockdown situations, perhaps enforced working from home, and just being totally displaced from their normal day-to-day working life. And a lot of people say, okay, well, you've just got to suck it up and get stronger. And a lot of people say, okay, stiff upper lip, that's what the British people are known for. However, the reality is that to a degree, there's a science behind getting mentally stronger, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our definition of mental fitness is developing the strength, the capability to deal with all of life's challenges in a way that reduces stress, a way that reduces the negative emotions that come from that. But this is a science-based program. This is not some form of philosophical well-being, diet-based lifestyle choice. These are exercises that you can learn to use to build quite literally your mental fitness, the muscle power of your brain to control the way that you react to life's challenges.
Do you think our mental fitness is probably the weakest it's ever been?
In my personal experience, the last 6 months with our client base, which is a global client base, we've seen remarkably resilient people find extended lockdowns, distances from work, just more than they've been able to deal with. Senior executives who literally can't leave the house for anxiety reasons. And I think whilst that is a very small number of people in the total population, it's still bigger than it's been for probably anybody can remember. And it's not fictional. People who are suffering these anxieties, for them, it's a lifestyle change.
And I suppose the interesting thing here is everyone talks about nutrition. Yeah, you are what you eat healthier. Talk about fitness. Fitness has been a huge topic due to COVID and the fact that through lockdowns, more people have taken up home fitness than ever before. We've seen a huge growth in that market, but we're not hearing a lot about mental health.
No, our coaching program works really around helping people recognize that the only person that puts them under stress is themselves. It's not that you can change the world and make bad things go away, but the way you respond to things that happen in life create the pressures that you put yourself under. And we all know there are loads of easy examples that by overreacting to something that happens, you can make it substantially worse. So if you look at a road rage incident, for example, you're on the motorway and somebody cuts you up. Well, there's two ways of reacting to that, aren't there? There's the passive reaction and there's the aggressive reaction. And each one will probably give you a totally different outcome and a totally different stress level. And if you bring that back to more day-to-day, moment-to-moment events, if you can take more control of your reactions to life's events, whether it's a difficult person, a very unpleasant email, a tough meeting, a tough phone call, if you can react to that in a more controlled, more effective way, you'll A, be in control of what's going on, B, reduce the amount of stress you put yourself under, and that will lead to just a much better feeling of positivity and well-being. And if you do that cumulatively through the day, through the week, through the months, you'll just completely transform your mental fitness. And our program starts with understanding that really it's down to you to take control. And it starts with a very intensive 6-week course, which is very similar in mental fitness to physical fitness. If you're going to start to run a marathon, you probably start with couch to 5K. And our mental fitness program starts with an intensive 6-week course, which gets you from a basic understanding through daily practice to get into the point where you are much more in control of your mind's reactions to events around you in a way that gives you this control and therefore this reduced stress, this much more positive feeling towards life and the way you approach it.
Now, there'll be a number of people listening to today's episode that, let's be honest, have had a really shocking 18 months worth of business trading. When they first went into lockdown the first time round, all income coming in was totally zilch. Yeah, the government's quite generously given furlough, access to either CBILS or business bounce back loan. You were allowed to defer payment on your corp tax, VAT, and personal tax. And that was for 12 months down the line. So everyone did that in the hope that things will get better. Fast forward sort of 18 months. And for many people, the reality is their businesses have nowhere near recovered. And now they're under probably the biggest financial burden and stress that they've been, for many people far greater than it was in 2008 and 2009. And they're probably tuning in today thinking, well, how can I be positive in this absolute cluster of a situation?
Yeah, and I think that's more than a fair starting point. Our program does never attempt to deny that life can be difficult. It never attempts to pretend bad things don't happen. It's not an illusion. However, the way that you respond to it will create the outcome. So we've all read the various examples of whose businesses have had to pivot very sharply through lockdown, whether it's pivot online or completely develop new products. We've seen examples, whether it's in PPE or whether it's home delivery, and it goes on. Well, the people that were dealing with that difficult problem for their business chose a new route. They chose a positive outcome. That didn't make it easy for them. That didn't mean they suddenly found a magic carpet that took them off to paradise. It doesn't mean that. But it means their approach was one of looking for the opportunity as opposed to wallowing in despair. But it didn't make the bad thing go away. It meant it needed to be dealt with. And these kinds of approaches are things you can teach yourself. It's got nothing to do with what you were born with. It's got nothing to do with your approach to life. You can teach yourself to understand that you're in control of your approach to whatever happens. And you can do that through practice on a daily basis.
I think that's I think you've just touched on saying that's quite fundamental there. And it's making sure that actually you learn to deal with things. So we all know that shit happens every single day. And it's actually probably the difference between sort of saying, okay, sooner rather than later, this potentially is a bad situation. It needs to be dealt with, as opposed to sticking your head in the sand and saying, oh, let's hope it's okay.
Absolutely. And again, it's not about being delusional. It's not about pretending it's not there. It's about looking at the situation and saying, somewhere in this is an opportunity. Somewhere in this is a gift. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to find it. And I'm going to be determined enough to take actual positive action to A, find it, and B, implement it. Now, just doing that, just being in that frame of mind, regardless of what the outcome is, just for that second, for that period of time that you are thinking like that, you are much happier than you would be if you were thinking, oh dear me, what's happened? How am I going to pay the bills? What's going to happen next? I've got to make people redundant. The mindset that you've changed yourself just simply by searching for a positive outcome is the release of stress. It is automatically a happier place to be than wallowing in despair. Now, these are two extreme examples, and we're talking about our program really dealing with even more mundane and day-to-day operational stuff, whether it's at work or in your personal life. And our program it's not some kind of philosophy. It's not some kind of well-being program. It's based around science. It's based around psychology. It's based around neuroscience, based around what neuro pathways do in terms of developing habits and how you can use them to develop new habits. And it's all about a program which day by day, exercise by exercise, not only gives you new learnings, it teaches you how you can train your mind, your reaction to life's challenges, to seek more positive outcomes as a routine, as a new habit, as a new way of looking at life. And if you do this, you will find cumulatively over time, your skill set grows, your ability to deal with conflict, your ability to build better relationships, whether that's socially or at business, your ability to just enjoy the life you're choosing to have rather than responding to the life that you're dealt with improves. And that's what the program will deliver. It is a lifetime change, but it starts with the Couch to 5K equivalent of an intensive 6-week course.
And the reality is, at the end of it, the outcome still may be dire, but your ability to deal with that dire situation is far better. You're far better equipped to deal with it. And actually, in many cases, you don't let it become so dire because your ability to sort of impact change, I take it, is greatly enhanced.
You're much more likely to find a positive outcome if you're looking for one than if you're not. And the chances of getting the right answer are clearly much improved rather than looking back and thinking, if only, if only, if only. If you take control of the situation, it's obvious, and we've all been through business, we all understand this is the case. If you take decisive action, even if it's imperfect action, you'll get a better result than if you stand by and wait for the market to overtake you, for your customers to fire you, or whatever bad things are going in your business life. And you can extend all of these analogies really to private life, social life. It's not only about business, it's about how you take your mind and allow it to be impacted from the external pressures, the external events that you can't control, to put them into a place where you are taking control.
So a lot of people may be sort of tuning in today. You've stoked their curiosity. They're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, because actually it can be quite an overwhelming feeling when you're saying, yeah, you can take control of your life. You can start becoming better, and they can't physically see it at this moment in time. What is a good set of first steps for them to take?
Well, the first thing I'd say is skepticism is a good thing. It's a dose of reality. So if you weren't skeptical about what I was saying, I'd encourage you to be skeptical. And what I would also encourage you to do is to take up the option of a free 30-minute coaching program with us. If you go to theexecutivemindset.co.uk, you can book a free 30-minute session, and we can show you exactly what this program is about and how it will benefit for you. And you can decide whether your skepticism is valid or whether actually this is the new life you can choose to take.
Either way, whether they choose to go forward or not, you're offering a 30-minute coaching session to help them get on their way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. This is a concept that we know works. This is a concept that we've put many tens of people through just since January of 2021. Senior executives, business owners, business leaders who have come to us with these challenges, and they've actually gone through the 30-minute session or whatever introduction we've given them, and they've gone on to use the program. And after the 6-week program, they've signed on for either the 3-month or the 12-month follow-on program, which supports and builds on the initial learnings. And so absolutely, the 30-minute program is free to everybody, and it's not a sales pitch, it's an explanation and exploration for them with their real life, real world problems that they'll bring to that session. And if nothing else, they'll get 30 minutes of coaching around issues they care about.
Brilliant. And if they want to connect with you directly, apart from going to your website, is there any other way you'd like to connect with people?
Yeah, if you just email me, gwiley@sagegreen.com, I'll happily take any email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Brilliant. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for the audience today?
I hope you've got something from this today. I hope it's given you a new insight onto how you can perhaps create the life that you choose and enjoy the life that you choose.
Brilliant. Thank you, Graham. If anything's resonated with you today, you want a bit more information, head over to boolkah.com and get in touch. And remember, failing to learn is learning to fail. So please stay safe. And once again, thank you so much, Graham.